awesome. I must look like a mic. Hey.
Oh, okay. That's a really good mic to pick it up all the way over here. Scared.
So we decided research design. Okay. Yeah, just to be cool.
Hey, everybody. I have to be completely honest. I came in this morning and looked at the little brochure, and I thought we were going to be in break room 2 and not on this stage. So pressure is up here. But we got this. We got this. My name is Loren Morris. I am a designer at Plextrack with Dan, who you just talked to. I'm going to introduce this awesome panel here in a second, but I wanted to do a little bit of customer research, see who we're talking to today. I'm going to ask you some questions. I want to know a little bit more about you. So how many of you are here are engineers or developers? Raise your hand. So quite a few of you. What about like product managers or project managers? Anyone here? Maybe just one? Is anyone here a designer? Designer, woo! Researcher. Okay, that's cool. That's why we're here. Yeah. How many of you work with a designer, like a dedicated designer or researcher every day? Just a couple? Okay. How many of you know what a designer does or a researcher? What do they do? There's quite a few more. How many of you have worked on a piece of software and launched it and had customers use it? A number of you? You right there. What do you work on? What is your job?
I am an entrepreneur, I'm an esthetician, and I own Brow Baby Aesthetics, which works with makeup.
Cool. So research and design might not seem like it might apply to what you do, but it's very much part of that kind of entrepreneurship process, product building process. So I'm hoping this is going to be interesting for you. How many of you have launched a product and then it sort of just falls flat? Maybe there's not a lot of interest in it, or maybe even worse, you get a lot of feedback that it's not very good. Has anyone had that happen before? Yeah. Has anyone ever designed a product and launched it and had customers use it and then offered to buy you a book on design? Or is that just me? Okay, might just be me. What we want to do today is just talk about what research and design mean when it comes to building software and making sure that we're designing the right products for our customers, the products that people want to use. And so I'm joined by an awesome crew that I want, they're going to introduce themselves, but I want them to tell them your name, your current role, the company you work for, and then just like really quickly how you got into either design or research.
Hello, everyone. I'm Shawn Murdock. I'm a principal product designer at Intuit here in Boise. I got into the field of product design as a graphic designer. I started in graphic design when I was very young. Grew up on a farm in Idaho, used to create logos for all the farming neighbors, whether they asked me or not. And so that's really where my career started.
My name is Julie Roberts Elliott. That's why you can hear people call me Julie Roberts or Julie Elliott. I go answer to both. So I'm a user experience researcher with Microsoft, and I actually got into the career because I waited tables. And I was very good at understanding people, and that turned into being a usability specialist and then kind of going through to now user experience.
I'm Melissa Thompson. I'm a principal product designer at Plextrack, and I actually also teach as an adjunct professor at the UX certification program here at Boise State. And I started in the realm of graphic design as well, was really passionate about design, and then it just kind of morphed into user experience as I really got passionate about making sure I was building the right thing and what my users were wanting. So it was before I knew the term UX.
Hi, everyone. My name is Malcolm Jackson. I am a current senior user experience researcher at Intuit, but I will be making a transition over to PlexTrack here pretty soon as
What?
the first
Really?
Yes, as their first researcher. I got into research. I've had a background in science, chemistry, and biology. Wanted to go to med school, and I took a psychology class, and I fell in love. It was so applicable, and introduced to the field of research and how that can help build out products, not just software, but actual physical hardware. Got me really interested in it, and so that's how I stumbled into it.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. So how this is going to be structured is I have a few questions I'm going to ask the group, but I want to leave the last 10 or 15 minutes for any questions you have for them. I want this to be as interactive as possible. So be thinking, put your thinking caps on. Any question doesn't even have to be related to design and research, but it would be cool if it did. Just cool. Let's kick things off. And I want to go to Julie and Malcolm. What is the role of a researcher? What responsibilities do you have day to day?
Roles and responsibilities day to day is it's really gathering customer feedback and aggregating it and synthesizing it, and then understanding what the themes are. So every day is different, right? Like sometimes you're running interviews and you're talking to people all day long. Other times you have your head down as you are taking all that information in, and you do a bit of coding and pulling out themes of whether it's pain points or delighters or those types of things that we look for. And then on another day, you could be throwing out a survey to 200 to 300 people, even more, and then you're pulling that information back in and again synthesizing. And so even though research is a lot about, you think about maybe it's talking and interviewing, but it's also kind of data analysis as well to some extent. And then the rest of it is, I'm talking about all the stuff I like, so I'm going to go ahead and pass it over. I
was going to wonder, are you going to say me anything? Just to add on to what Julie said, I would say the responsibility and the role of a researcher is to always remain curious, to be that advocate for the end user or your customer, to be that voice in the room with design, PM, and engineering, being that advocate of what we've heard, gathering those insights, as Julie was mentioning, and maybe using different methods to gather that information to then tell a story to why we're building this product. So we can all build products, we can all create something, but what are we creating it for? What's that bigger why? What problem is it going to solve? What need is it going to fill? And that's typically the role of the researcher, and the day-to-day would definitely change in how you accomplish that. But I would say that that's the responsibility.
Yeah, and I would agree that we are definitely the advocate of the user because we are in there with the user constantly. So we need to advocate constantly for that user, even when we're getting pushback.
Great. Shawn and Melissa, same question for you, but around design. Roles, responsibilities of a designer.
Yes. Okay, on the spot. So yeah, I would say it depends on the organization and the size that you're in, because I've often been in situations where I'm not lucky enough to have a UX researcher that I get to partner with. So if you're at a smaller organization, you'll also have some of those responsibilities on your plate. But I love being the voice of the customer and to really build empathy for who they are. But then it's also a lot of, I would say, looking for patterns. What are familiar patterns? What's familiar for your users? Really doing an analysis of what you have. And I would say it's a lot of iterating. So you are in kind of the realm of designing and building prototypes and wireframes. You're also in a realm of gathering feedback. And I would say feedback from the user is important, but it's key. It's number one. But you also want to get feedback from your product managers, from your development partners. I get some of my, I don't get it, but I get some of the best ideas from the developers I work with. They have such a unique eye and skill set. And now being at PlexTrack in a very tech-oriented industry, they have some solutions that just weren't obvious to me. And so it's those relationships are really important. And I'm sure you have more to add.
Just to add to that, I think as a designer, we have the unique skill set where we're creating. We're taking all the input from customers, from user research, working with PMs to define the problem. But we're also working as a team to come up with the idea and then crafting that idea and actually creating it. And so the rest of the team can visualize what that solution will look like. And I think that's one of the unique skills that a designer has that really sets us apart from the other skill sets within the product kind of triad team.
Cool. Thank you. I'm interested, the word problem has come up a few times, like finding out what the problem is, articulating the problem. If you've ever worked on anything, there's a lot of problems your customers may have, or needs, you might call it something like that. Why is it important to, I guess it's important to articulate the problem, but how do you know which problem to work on? I know I've sat down with one customer and they've had dozens of problems. How do I know which one is the most important or the most impactful one to work on?
I guess I have a mic, so I'll go. I think there's a lot of ways to do that. I'm very framework oriented, so I love kind of the quadrant grid of assessing the user's impact and the amount of effort it's going to take to build a solution. I think looking at something through those lenses helps prioritize work. It's not a tried and true, you can't do it for everything, but when you have limited resources and limited time, it's a really helpful lens so that you can kind of focus on the areas that will bring the most impact to the user with the resources that you have.
Yeah, to add to that, there are a myriad of methods that you can use to prioritize. I like using what's the theme that's popping up the most and that it might be the most severe for our customers that we're not currently solving for. And is that something that our business is uniquely positioned to solve for well? Is it something that maybe they can use with a third-party integration or another platform? Are they looking for us to solve that problem? And then being able to prioritize not just what we're hearing from maybe a few customers, but then being able to synthesize, are we hearing this from multiple customers? Maybe not in the same level of detail, but maybe it's starting to come up in themes of like, people can't log in. Well, you don't need 100 people to tell you that I can't log in. After 5 people have said I can't log in, you can start digging into what are some of the technical reasons, what are some of the experience reasons on our UI that they might be getting held up on. And then you can use that to start planning out and prioritizing, is this something that our company is uniquely positioned to solve for? If yes, then kind of makes it to the top of that list. And if something else bucks it off, you just have to weigh those, not only from a business perspective, but from a customer perspective of how it's going to drive impact.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is that we bring in you've got to bring in your stakeholders and you got to understand what the company is looking for and then bringing in the customers. So it's not just you go out and interview the customers and get their perception. You also have to bring in what the company is looking for, what we can provide and provide well, because you don't want to design for everybody, because that just never seems to work. So you want to design and research what is working for that company and those goals for that company and whether or not these customers fit. And so when we go out and try to find the customers that fit, then same, like Malcolm said, then finding those themes and stuff like that.
One of the things that's helped us at Intuit is actually using UserVoice, which is part of a tool that you can request and get feedback from your customer base that helps us prioritize some of those top issues that customers are feeling, some of the pains that can help us know what's important to them to be a problem to solve. Also data, like having a data partner that you're working with, analytics, because you want a heuristic look at what's going on across your customer base to really identify like those high level themes when you're thinking about like what's the most important problem to solve. Because if you do interviews, sometimes you can get narrow feedback of like what one or two people may be experiencing or feeling, and it may not be the whole customer base.
I'm interested now in kind of taking this, you know, I'm really interested in like your all experience. I'd love to hear about something you've worked on at your jobs that has led to an impact. When I say impact, I'm kind of leaving that up to you about what that means. Is it financial? Is it somehow the team has new priorities? I'll leave that up to you, but I'm interested in some of the things maybe you all have worked on, and because of design and research has made an impact at where you work.
Okay. I'm going to take this off the cuff a little bit. At Intuit, we had, what were they called? Develop days?
Personal dev days.
Yeah, personal dev days. And then we would every 6 months do like a week. GED. Yeah. Okay. General engineering days. I apologize. Anyways, but this is one of my fondest memories, and I worked with the accessibility team, and we would go, and during this time frame, you had like 2 weeks to just work with engineers and designers and researchers, and we would go out and research what accessibility needs were there, and we had a tool that Shawn was talking about that allowed us to kind of have an idea of where our users were having a hard time getting into our website. So we had one time where we had a user that could not put her information into the calendar that we were working on. And it was just this big ordeal for her. And so when we interviewed her, she was so just like, I know how to do this, and I hate that I'm the only one that has to call my boss and she has to put it in there for me. And she had, I believe, low vision. And so she just couldn't, she used a screen reader and it just wasn't working the way that she wanted it to. So we came together and we created a design, and the engineers on the back end created a shortcut and all this stuff. And when we showed her this shortcut and how she could do it, she was so like, okay, right on, thank you. And so we're like, oh, that kind of fell flat. Like that didn't make the impact that we wanted, until we had picked the color red for her, because in the interview, she had said she really likes red. And so when she saw that the screen reader said red was her color, that's when her eyes lit up. It was the most amazing thing. And so for me, that was the impact on the customer around accessibility, and something that we did in a 2-week process that was just put our heads down and tried to figure it out. And that to me is an impact. That to me was impactful, to just see the delight and be able to customize for what she wanted. That's my story.
We were really big into apply automation for a lot of our customers that use our application around time tracking. And we felt like we served one real customer segment very well. So a typical type of user, maybe in landscaping or project management construction. We were really interested in those maybe professional services. So maybe you're an accountant or a graphic designer. You might do things independently of another corporation. We were really interested, is there a way that we can improve your time tracking experience? Is there a way that we can automate based off of what we see on your screen, based off of the applications that you're opening and things like that? And so we had this grand idea, like, yeah, we could just automate it for you. And we developed, we sketched, which was the beautiful part about the research and the design that we got to do. This was all happening over a short time frame, limited effort from development, but being able to quickly get in front of customers of saying, yeah, we could do this, we could do that, and then hearing it fall flat on its face. Yeah, there's no way you can actually automate this. I do too many things. I take a call for one customer, I'm in a meeting in another one, you would just screw it up. I'd rather just do it myself. So we came to the conclusion, okay, maybe let's not automate. Let's just suggest certain things for you based off of what you've done, giving them the opportunity to correct us in that moment in time, and then learn from that over time to where we get a little bit smarter with our suggestions. We got to the point to where we were actually going to put this in front of customers, very low lift of, it would be like a little desktop application, and then me and some other coworkers on the back end would automate, will manually collect their information and then pop up a suggestion for them for their typical day. And it was just really impactful of being able to understand within a short period of time, low effort, is this going to be bringing value to our customers? And that's just one of the impactful projects.
I think thinking about impact, you're trying to make an impact on your customer's life. You're trying to make it better in whatever way that your product can help them. At Intuit, I'm working on the time tracking team, and we're very passionate about helping build prosperity, helping businesses succeed. And one of the projects that I had opportunity to work on is actually taking T-Sheets, which was a standalone like time tracking software that you pay a subscription per month, and actually making some of those time tracking features part of QuickBooks. So any QuickBooks customer can actually have better time tracking to see the benefits of time tracking for their business and have that available for free as part of QuickBooks. And that has actually helped us as a business to help grow our business and also make it available to all of our customer base.
And before I was at PlexTrack, I worked for a startup that's here locally called Cause, and they do, it's basically like Venmo for donations to any nonprofit in the US. And actually one of my favorite projects there was working with another company. They're called Thanks. And it was actually a tool that a lot of salespeople use as a follow-up, and they'll send a gift card to thank them for the time to show a demo. Usually it's like $5 to Starbucks. But I was actually able to build a flow where they could choose instead to actually make a donation to a nonprofit of their choice. And so it was really fun to think about all of the people that it impacted. It impacted Cause because we had more exposure to our application. It impacted Thanks because it was serving a need that they didn't have. Not everyone needs a $5 coffee card. They wanted to fulfill something more for these people. And then the salespeople that are reaching out, thanking people for their time, they're able to say, you can give this to something that matters to you. And then the person that receives it, they can support the nonprofits that they know and love. But then greater than that, just the nonprofits that were able to get the $5 instead of the coffee that would have been purchased. So it was just really fun to think about the layers of impact and that, you know, a simple solution. And many of us appreciate a free cup of coffee, but it's also unexpected money. So it's kind of fun to be able to bring delight to an organization that wouldn't otherwise expect it.
I've heard the term delight come up a few times from you all. I'm interested in understanding first, what is, you know, what is delight, and how do you find that when you're talking to customers?
Their eyes just sparkle, and you're like, ha, that's it right there. That's what I got.
Yeah, I think part of that experience to get that sparkle is giving them more than what they expected, of actually like going above and beyond their expectations, of creating an experience that they love and want to use and actually makes an impact on their life.
Yeah, I think it's also helpful to have the framework of you always hear of MVP, minimum viable, but it's also becoming more standard, and I love this. But switching that language to minimum lovable product, because if it's not something that, if we're just being viable, like there's no delight in that. You might as well make it something that is enjoyable and lovable that actually brings more value. And so I enjoy that, just that small change in the acronym.
Just to add to that, I would say it doesn't have to be a big TADA, essentially. It could be the little things that you're taking care of within your product of, I no longer have to click all of these particular items to select everything. There's a select all, and it just transfers everything over for me. Or I no longer have to sync and watch it do all the back end stuff. I'm not an engineer, but it does its magic, essentially. Being able to bring them along in that process, taking out little steps that don't necessarily need to be there, adding steps that make it easier for our customers to use the products and the platforms that we have. I think that kind of starts adding up to the delight factor that we can provide our customers.
And I would expand that when when I take Shawn's designs and I put it in front of a user, that's that click that happens in their eyes when they're like, oh, that's awesome. That's a delighter for me.
That's great. I'm interested. We have a lot of people here that aren't designers and researchers, but maybe aspire to be or need to do that as part of their job. Do you have advice for people here who their job is not dedicated design and research, but want to do more of like building that customer empathy, finding those places to be delightful? Do you have advice for them?
So Intuit actually has it's searchable online. It's called Design for Delight, and it's a design thinking approach that they developed with IDEO, and it's been iterated on for over 10 years, and it's actually a formula that we follow at Intuit, and it basically walks through like the process of talking to customers, doing interviews, and actually guiding you through that process, using that customer empathy to define the problem to solve. And then after you define the problem to solve, working with your team, they don't have to be designers. Anyone can brainstorm ideas and rapidly experimenting with customers by creating paper prototypes, like anything you can create to share an idea, and getting that in front of customers to see how well that fixes their problem. So I think there's lots of resources out there to think about, like design thinking, to help you as you're getting started or want to think about the impact that it can make.
To add to that, I would say from a research perspective, defining what success looks like and your goal of that research. So you're never going to be perfect at any research method that you do. I still mess up in certain research sessions with customers. That's going to happen. But defining success, defining what you're trying to learn in those goals, having that up front will make that process a little bit easier, and then just continue trying to learn different methods. And so I stay tapped into different research articles, different research hubs, essentially, that I'm sure we can share out afterwards, essentially, but just being somewhat in the know and always learning. But for those that are just starting out and maybe have to dabble into it, you're probably the only designer or PM on your team and nobody can do research. Just being able to take that step back, what do we want to learn and what does success look like? And then being able to gauge that as you've gone through the process, and then ask yourself, what would you do differently next time? What did you learn? Things like that.
Yeah, and as Shawn's talking about the design for delight, at Microsoft, we kind of do something similar. It's obviously not called that, but what I love about it is you can bring developers in and PMs in, and you show them that even though they may be coding and doing all those things, everybody can sketch. Everybody can draw a stick figure, and it helps bring the whole team together. And so if you are developers or PMs and you're trying to understand the design aspect, go join a group that's putting on a what would that be called? Customer driven insights or design for delight workshop, because it really allows you to kind of take a step back and see. It's a great process.
And if you don't actually have that resource, I think it's also really helpful to really ask for your customer data, and so that you can really build that empathy for them. At Cincy, when I was there, we actually did lunch and learns where we actually showed user videos we had visitor recordings in our platform. We also had user testing videos that we were able to show, and we had so many people that became advocates from the user from that across the organization. You don't have to be a designer to facilitate that. You can dive into your analytics platform to really think through the customer experience and build empathy for them. If you have any user personas and kind of get to know who they are and their situation. But I think that the access to that, it's not something that's always across organizations easy to get to, but it's usually easy to share. So I would just encourage asking for that type of information. And if you don't have it and you feel passionate about it, I'm sure they'd love it if you spearheaded getting some of that.
Thank you. Questions from the audience? Anyone out there have a question? Yes, Mitch. Yeah, thanks, Mitch. For those online, the question was, how do you make a business case for the delight aspect of a design of what you're working on to your client that maybe you're working for, or to the team you're working on? Do you have advice around that?
Okay. Give me a mic. What I have found when I was at Google, what worked really well was storytelling and bringing in the user voice. So when you are talking to the upper leadership, you want to obviously bring in the data. You're going to want to bring in how it's going to impact the business. But what I have seen is when you start showing the user and the way that the user interacts and the delight they get from maybe a sketch that we saw, and really telling the story from the user's perspective, that has been very helpful and impactful to get the upper leadership that's kind of once removed to understand why delight is so important.
I also wonder, and I don't know specifically for an ad agency, if you could kind of back that up with data to prove your use case or your business case. Some really simple, and maybe this is kind of guerrilla style research, so hold me on this. But you could do like an A/B test to actually see performance differences. There's also really simple preference tests, like which one do you prefer? And then you can kind of dive deeper. Why do you prefer that? What resonated with you? And so really just having some way to back the decision up with data, I think has been really valuable.
I would say everything that they said, I would encompass it to where you need to be able to tell the story of the pain or the problem that you're solving with your customers in the solution that you're bringing and why that delight is important, but also being able to back it up and tell the full story with the data. So if you don't necessarily have access to behavioral metrics before, like usage and things like that, being able to capture as early as possible, how do your current clients or customers feel about the experience that they have now, and then being able to gauge that after you've released that particular delightful solution into the product, and be able to compare those maybe at a qualitative level, and then still being able to add some of the quantitative back-end data as well. And so it's kind of a mixture, and it's great to have those two complement each other.
Yeah. So when I worked at an agency in Utah a few years back, the creative director that I worked with, basically he said that if you want to sell something, it has to be tied back into the objective. So knowing the objective that the client's trying to achieve can help to sell that delight. What is it that they are tracking? from a business standpoint and from a customer standpoint that you can tie that delight to help with the data that Malcolm was talking about.
Cool. Yeah, great answers. So we are right at time, but so I wanted to let everyone know that I think a few of us are going to stay here after. So if you have additional questions, please reach out, let us know. We also, just shameless plug, we are kicking back up Boise User Experience Meetup starting later this year. We took a little break because of COVID, but we're coming back. So if you have interest in this or need advice on starting a business or D4D, that is coming soon. So you can look us up on meetup.com. But I want to give just a round of applause to our panelists. Thank you. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you.